they went on this like 3-week tirade saying a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theories about me.
What's your favorite?
Oh my God. Well, just basically that I control the internet. I'm secretly taking dark money. They said I'm a secret MAGA, Republican, and they found when I,
of all people?
they found when I like.
That's good.
Yeah, it was
That's great.
really
Wow.
funny. Somebody was sharing some screenshots. She's a secret Republican, and I'm sure people will be in the comments. Those aren't conspiracies. Some of them very much are, you guys. Okay.
We're long since demonetized, so go ahead.
Yeah. Okay.
Welcome to Doomscroll. I'm your host, Joshua Citarella. My guest is Taylor Lorenz, a journalist, author, and content creator. So 90 influencers, what was your sense given because there's a range, right? Some of them are very big, some of them are proportionately small. Mm-hmm. What percentage of their income would you say that funding a lot? So what percentage of their income does that funding make up? So for example, if someone is 10% dependent on funding they're getting from a dark money group, if they take it or leave it, or they say, I don't like these guidelines, I'm going to do whatever, they're not suffering that much. If they are 80% of their income dependent on dark money, then they really can't deviate from the script. So what was your sense of like up and down this scale? How much of people's income is this money making up?
It's so funny because you had people like Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman, these people with millions of followers that are subscribers that are in this program. But then a lot of the other people, if you look at people who are noted in the article and look at, who only has a couple 100,000 followers?
Yeah.
Those are the people where they're I would imagine.
They really need it, yeah.
I would imagine that they really need this money. And those are the people, especially one really wacko woman that has been the most vocal. And so, and they have been sort of the most, and this one woman who was going totally ballistic. And I was like, she must be this must be like her whole paycheck because she was going so deranged. She's the one that also tried to claim the NAACP is a dark money group also, which is something these people are claiming. I was like, no, it's not.
We're getting some good ones today.
Yeah, I know. Crazy takes. And I actually had a journalist who covers dark money to like do a whole podcast episode trying to explain to these people like what that means. It's not a word. They also claimed on Instagram threads that the term dark money was racist. And that is why I'm racist. No, there's takes on threads that you wouldn't believe. And they were calling me like a snow cockroach or something.
What?
Yeah. You wouldn't believe if you had to walk a day in my mentions, Josh. Basically, like I'm a white supremacist. Never mind, by the way, that this is a program run by white men of majority white content creators.
Okay.
But they tried to do the thing of like, so you don't want black women to get paid? It's like, well, no one said that. And even if the program was 100% black women, what is that? Like, let black women scam? Or, obviously this is not a scam, but it's like what is that? That doesn't change the fact that this is a potentially dubious, unethical
very dark woke of you.
Sort of system here that we have. Anyway, it was really crazy. And I'm not a Republican, so spoiler. I actually just want the Democrats to be effective. And I would have written about this I've written about these programs on the right, and I will write about them on the left. And if any, far left billionaires out there start funding things, I don't know, I'd probably report on it. I definitely would.
You've spent a lot of time online. Both of us have interviewed young people who post outrageous memes, are extremely online, How do you separate online irony from serious politics?
I think it is funny when like the media cannot recognize irony, because a lot of the internet is sort of ironic, and you see people, especially like conservative media, loves to like freak out about like ironic posting, I don't know. I mean, but I do think that like at a certain point, if you are just, I don't know, ironically saying slurs all day, like it's fair to call you a racist, like you are performing racism, whether you want to acknowledge that to yourself or not. And so I do think like there was this time, it was more during Trump's first presidency, they would be like, we're just doing it all ironically.
The edgelording in 2016. Yeah. Well, I think after Charlottesville, that dropped off significantly, but like 2015, 16 ramping up, there's a lot of people who like don't mean this stuff at all, but they are posting it a lot. And that culture, once things like got really serious, a number of people backed off. But that's kind of what I want to ask you is like, when can we reasonably assume that somebody who's posting this material kind of all the time and up until the edge of the terms of service when can we reasonably assume that they, in private, hold extreme views?
I think they do hold. I think we can assume it pretty early on. Like, I think like whether you're doing it ironically or not, what is it? Actions speak louder than words, like you're kind of pilling yourself into it. So,
Irony poisoning yourself?
Yeah. Like you're like gonna like, you're sort of just going down the road. This is why I don't like leftists saying slurs where they're like, oh, we just need to be dark woke and like we actually just need to be bigoted and we'll just, be fat phobic and say slurs about the conservatives. And it's like, but now you're saying slurs.
I've never understood what dark woke was. I went off the internet for a week and I never actually got that one.
Don't even like learn about it. But it is this idea of like, I've seen a lot of like these leftists kind of doing that sometimes. Not a lot, some of them. I just think it's a stupid strategy because it's like, but the whole point is to be like against bigotry.
Well, what do you think that young people are doing when they make these kind of outrageous or offensive posts, right? Because this is kind of, it's impossible to not notice that this is part of the media environment that we're in now, right? We're constantly having to differentiate, does this person mean this as a joke? Do they mean it for real? Does the government, these posts from the White House, for example.
They mean it for real.
Right, but it's in the same kind of vernacular and language.
Yeah.
And so this kind of conflation has become really, really complex in trying to determine where someone's actual political commitments or sentiments lie. What do you think that they're trying to accomplish through posting that material?
I think a lot of young people part of being a teenager and a young person is testing boundaries and learning your own boundaries and being a little bit, do you know what I mean?
This is why we get along. Yeah, that's what I was trying to.
I think I think you have to like allow space for people to learn and grow. And also recognize that like a 17-year-old should not be held to the same standards as a 35-year-old.
Right.
And on the internet, it's so hard to know who's who. But, and one can very much influence the other. But I think it becomes a problem when it's a pattern and somebody's clearly kind of sinking deeper and deeper. And when they're doing real harm. Like, I think you can't harm as many people when you're just you're just like a random shit poster. Maybe you're doing edgy replies. You're not really like, you're posting memes to like 3,000 people. Like, okay, you're not really like, you don't have power really on the internet. But if you are building an audience and potentially monetizing that audience and growing and developing a fandom around your like increasingly edgy content, like then I think it's fair for people to give you a little bit more scrutiny.
Yeah, I have, on the contrary to this, I have traced the origin of certain memes where it's like, there are probably a lot of 14-year-olds in Pennsylvania that are making things that get reposted by very prominent influencers, in some cases people in government. But I tend to think of this as like, I've heard it referred to as the ironic hedge, where they're kind of like beta testing their own positions on things. And it's like, does this piss people off? How do they react to this? And then they kind of privately calibrate how they themselves are feeling on a particular issue.
And I think it also depends on the person too. It's like when it pisses people off, do you like that attention?
Right,
Are you getting validated by it? Or does that scare you? Does that make you want to dial it back? And I think everybody is kind of, it's this like two-way pulling kind of that's happening.
We've seen a similar thing in the past few years where people have gone through what is sometimes referred to as the Bernie to New Right pipeline.
Yeah.
Do you know anyone who's made that trip?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know some people from 2015, 2016 that were, I had a good friend, unfortunately, recently, who I realized is a complete psycho now. And he was always, I actually remember he was one of the first people that I knew pretty well that supported Bernie, and he kind of like convinced me that like Bernie was good. And then I ended up covering Bernie for 3 months. When I was at the Hill covering the election, like those first 3 months, and I was going to Bernie rallies and talking to people, and like I was like, yes, this man is saying everything right, and then watching what the DNC did to him. But I think a lot of people have gotten radicalized. What happened with him, and I think a lot of other people, was like wokeness. Like they hated the like wokeness. Like I think they were so resentful of the Democrats that like they just got like really radicalized. And a lot of people, I saw somebody put this way better than and you probably have seen it too. Like somebody did a really good, they like tweeted about it, and I'm going to butcher it. But let me try and explain the concept, and I think it's true. Okay. It's like a lot of men, especially like cisgender, white, straight men, whatever, like guy, like the most sort of generic guy.
I'm in the room.
Yeah. like they only can understand like oppression through like their own like labor exploitation. And so they're like leftists in the sense of like labor, like they understand that they are like exploited through their labor, which is actually why they have such terrible positions on disabled people, because they view those people the same way that Republicans do, where like they're just leeches and they don't work and blah, blah, blah. Not true. But so they don't have solidarity with other marginalized groups because they sort of look at those things as like secondary issues to this fundamental problem of like labor exploitation or whatever. And I think that those types of men were very easily radicalized to the right because the right was selling them a bunch of bullshit populism slop or whatever that they believed.
What are your thoughts on the public response to the murder of Brian Thompson, allegedly, by Luigi Mangione?
What are my thoughts? Well, I think I've shared them on national television before. As I said on television before, I feel a lot of joy that, don't cut this part out like Piers Morgan did,
You have my word.
that people are finally being forced to acknowledge the barbaric and murderous nature of our for-profit insurance system. And I do appreciate that that tragic event led to that increased awareness. Will it lead to any sort of systemic change? I don't know. But I'm glad that it was sort of an opportunity to talk about it and maybe for people in power to sort of recognize that there's this like simmering anger among people on that issue, sort of bipartisan. Yeah.
I think the thing that I've been considering recently is that there seems to be not just a breakdown of like liberal norms, but a breakdown of lawfulness in general.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Because
arguably there has always been unlawful activity, like, a politicizing event for you, the war in Iraq, like we all knew the weapons of mass destruction were fake. The New York Times had to cop to it later. But there seems to be a very clear, like explicit breakdown of the rule of law.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, the kind of most clear implication of that is that you can, in some cases, see public support for someone being murdered, right? Like that's kind of any society that has law, that's kind of the first one. And so I've started to wonder about, as good progressive liberals, that some of our theory of political power exists within the framework of Enlightenment institutions, that there's a general consensus among the people in the echelons of power, decision-making power in those institutions, about the general equalities, liberties, the rights, the value of the individual. And then when you see something rising which, calls itself the Dark Enlightenment, for example, like power is self-legitimizing. They don't care about these things. And if someone is weak, their politics are to punish them to take power, and then, you have rightfully earned it in a way.
Yeah.
And so I begin to wonder if actually some of these developments are bringing us down a pretty dark path for the 21st century, where the type of politics that we will see return looks a lot more like the 1920s than it does like the 1960s, for example.
Oh, definitely. Max Reed wrote a great piece.
He's great. Yeah.
I love him. He doesn't write enough. I want more from him always. He wrote a great piece like years ago, and it was about how like the internet, the headline was something like the internet is like returning us to medieval times or something.
Yeah.
And I think about it all the time because we really are getting back to that time with like the mysticism and the like weird class structure and the like wealth stratification and the embrace of huffing and disease, I guess. And
are we going to have plague doctors soon?
Maybe. It would be great to have any sort of public doctor. But also with like public executions,
Right.
And so and I don't think it's just the internet, of course, that's brought us there. I think it's like capitalism generally and sort of like this deranged political system that we're under. But I do think increasingly people feel that nothing is real. They're correct that like all of these institutions are sort of built on it's a facade, and nobody has to actually play by the same rules.
Right.
And there's actually special rules for anyone, and so I think that's where this nihilism comes in, where it's like everything is a joke, and you can kind of con your way into anything. And this is America, and also we live in this attention economy now. And so I guess I don't see how it doesn't go into that dark, like 1920s era too, please. But I think that we should challenge that and like provide a version for a better society that is not just survival of the fittest and, you know, fuck everybody but myself, like sort of energy.
Yeah. No, I mean, I completely agree.
And also, like, we shouldn't have to, like, be shooting. In a just world, people like Brian Thompson, who are complicit in the murder of countless Americans through denial of, you know, healthcare coverage, people like that would be held accountable for their crimes. And that would be seen as murder. And these violent systems would be recognized as violent. And right now, people in power don't recognize the violent systems as violent. And so people are like, okay, well, you are totally cool with violence. Charlie Kirk also, right? Like, who, like, they see the way, like, someone like him is mourned versus other people and whose
less of a response
matter.
But certainly there are people who seem to be cheering it on.
I think there's less of a response publicly because the hammer came down and Trump is president right now.
The ban hammer.
And like, you know, just there's censorship and like
they're getting fired hammer.
Yeah,
too.
They're getting fired. The FBI is putting them on lists and stuff. Yeah. But I mean, I think privately a lot of people will say things that, you know, they feel. And I don't think so many people are, you know, I think that there's this MAGA movement to like lionize him. And I think a lot of people privately feel uncomfortable with that.
In as much as you feel comfortable.
Sure.
I want to ask you about your health. And this is usually something that's off limits for this show. I don't ask people personal questions. But people have used your health and your positions on masking to attribute political positions to you. In as much as you feel comfortable, would you tell us about your health experiences in the last few years and your positions on masking now?
Yeah, my position on masking is everyone should mask as much as you can. Like, airborne disease is real. And, you know, I don't know, it's this very weird belief where, like, I think these people, if it was 150 years ago, would have been drinking water full of shit and been like, cholera's actually building our immune system. Why are you guys advocating for clean? I mean, this was the case actually, right? What was his name? Semmelweis? Or he was the washing hands guy. I can't remember. The guy that tried to like replace the pump, remember, was like trying to get clean water. There was some guy that was advocating for clean water and they were like, you're crazy. Like, you know, that's not how disease works. And like just chugging this like disgusting water from the East River, like that's essentially
East River.
That's essentially where we are right now with clean air. Like, we know that disease travels through air. We know that airborne pollution is real. For instance, in the subways, you know, workers that work down in the subways, the ticket collectors and the train operators and stuff, they have significant, you know, health issues from the PM 2.5 and the residual sort of grime and stuff that's down there. We know that.
Sorry, PM 2.5 for people who don't know.
It's basically a small, very small sort of particulate matter in the air that can affect you. It also can come from wildfire smoke. I live in LA, so clean air is something that also is going to be a huge issue with climate change, right? Masking is sort of a personal thing. It's basically like having a water filter, right? Where it's like, okay, essentially, if we didn't have clean water today, you'd have to individually filter. Everyone has to individually filter their water. That's kind of where we are right now with clean air. Because we don't have any sort of systemic solutions and because none of these people on the left or the right want to advocate for these systemic solutions like upgraded ventilation, far UV, you know, cleaning of the air, you know, all these other better ventilation. Again, all the things that we actually had earmarked a lot of money for that Biden gave to the police. Because we never made any of those sort of upgrades and because we don't have this broader health infrastructure, we're not doing anything about it. And I think that in the meantime, we have a responsibility in the case of state abandonment to do as much as we can to protect each other. This is why you have disabled people forming mask blocks in every single city to ensure, you know, for instance, at the LA wildfires, the disabled people stepped up and said, hey, we have thousands of N95 masks that we can give out to people.
People are getting poisoned from the fires. Yeah.
Yes, and you're seeing they're getting cancer, they're dying. And people are getting poisoned as well from inhaling COVID, from inhaling smoke, from inhaling exhaust because they work at a toll booth or, you know, whatever. We need clean air. We need clean air from disease, from pollution, from all of these things. And in the absence of that, we have to do our best to filter our own air and protect ourselves from environmental factors, educate people about protecting themselves from environmental factors. My whole family pretty much works construction. You wouldn't show up to a job site working on hazardous materials without your mask on. Now that masks have been politicized, a lot of construction workers will not even, like, you know, they're supposed to wear it on the job site, but masks have been so effectively politicized that they're even
like
politicized
when they're working with asbestos or something?
Site. Yes.
Really?
I mean, not everyone, but I was talking about it's certain people are in certain environments are rolling back worker protections on things like construction sites. That's really dangerous. And so we need to educate people about the concept of masks. A lot of people never really learned this during the earliest days of COVID because, again, there was no education on the different types of masks. So they throw on a surgical mask, which doesn't protect against airborne pathogens. And they're like, well, I got sick anyway, masks don't work. It's like, because you're wearing a baggy surgical mask or you're wearing a cloth mask. You need a KN95. Or if you're dealing with, certain construction materials, you need something different. So we haven't educated people about it. And I think it's, I'm not one of these people that goes around shaming people and, oh, you were caught without a mask, whatever. Everyone's going to take their own different sort of risk tolerance. But listen, even if you only mask 20% of the time, even if you only mask on the subway, that's better than nothing. You are breaking chains of transmission. And as we know from the earliest days of COVID, every break in that chain of transmission matters. I got COVID from somebody that was 5 times vaccinated when I was fully vaccinated, back when they were telling people that you couldn't get or spread COVID if you're vaccinated.
Right.
And, now I have a permanent, I'm permanently immunocompromised and have organ damage from it. And I'm lucky. And I was able to rest to an extent. Most of these service workers are sent right back to work. And another friend of mine who had COVID and infected somebody else I know, he was back at work after 3 days at his restaurant job. He infected everyone in that kitchen, including these workers that have no health care, that are doing the dishes. I don't even know if they're documented or not. But, and none of them were able to take off. So they all worked with COVID for days in a kitchen together. Yeah. And that is going to cause long COVID because, again, the most important thing you can do with COVID is rest. And we have capitalism, which forces you back to work. So, thankfully, I have every single privilege in the world, right? Like, I have a platform, I have money, I have access to endless masks. I'm involved in, I have enough connections.
From home.
I can work from home. I have amazing doctors that will be able to see me, that I can get into things.
Thank God, yeah.
But most people don't. And especially a lot of these people, even that are working unhoused, people in LA, a lot of people that are unhoused in LA are working, which is fucked up. They don't have those protections. And they are going into these high-risk environments with no airborne disease protocols. We should advocate for airborne disease protocols. And I hate these leftists that are like, oh, that's an individualism, whatever you're talking about. We are talking about one of the most transmissible diseases on the planet. Even if I was perfectly healthy, COVID didn't bother me at all, and I was right back to normal, I morally cannot understand, if you have the privilege and the knowledge to prevent harm to someone else, why you wouldn't do that? At least in a place like the subway, right? Okay, maybe you're gonna go out to the bars on the weekend, right? Not everyone lives in LA where you can do indoor, outdoor. But do it 10% of the time. Or fight like hell. All the people that are anti-masking, I'm like, where the fuck are you? Why are you not showing up to these city council meetings? Where were you when fighting against the mask bans? It's only disabled people pretty much that are doing this. And random communist and anarchist groups sometimes, you know what I mean? It's so weird. But it's like if these people refuse to mask, but they were leading the charge on upgrading, ventilation in factories and upgrading, or in, factories are pretty spacious, but I don't know, other sort of working situations, if they were, I would be a little more sympathetic, but they're not doing any of that. They're actually just doing nothing because they bought into this far-right RFK brain denialism where they just want to act like airborne disease, doesn't exist. Just the way people 150 years ago wanted to act like, drinking shit-filled water was totally fine.
I was just about to ask you your thoughts on RFK.
He sucks, and he is a eugenicist. So I think he's the last person that should be in charge of public health. But I don't think we'd get someone like him in charge of public health without what Biden did, which is essentially mainstream this anti-vax, ideology. And the way that vaccines are politicized too, where, let me explain to you how this happened too with the messaging around the vaccines. The idea was, if you get vaccinated, you're totally fine. Long COVID doesn't exist. You won't get or spread. You basically get vaccinated and you can totally forget about the pandemic. So that's what a lot of liberals believe. And then a lot of people on the right are so anti-vax, right? They're just anti-vax pilled and they're like, oh, the vaccines are what's causing all this stuff. Never mind, there's massive rates of long COVID, actually from higher rates, I think, from even before the vaccine. So it's basically made it so that each side can blame sick people for being sick. If you're liberal, you can blame people for being unvaccinated, and that's why you're sick. You didn't get enough vaccines. And if you are conservative, you can say, well, you got the vaccines, and that's the reason you're sick. And both allow for this individualist mindset where you end up blaming the person and rather our entire system, which is failing everybody. And I think also there's all these people now that I know that were previously never anti-vax and have now feel such distrust in the government.
Well, that's where I wanted to bring us next is how should we understand this unprecedented shift of young people moving towards the right?
Well, I think they moved to the right for so many different reasons. Obviously, you know more than anyone. You know them all. But I think there's just been so many sort of like radicalizing things. And I think health, like, I think that like the pandemic itself, the ongoing pandemic has radicalized, continues to radicalize people, our economic system. And the internet, in a way, I think it just, the internet sort of gives visibility into the hypocrisy of people in power. And a lot of young people, I think, at least the ones I talk to, they have sort of this like nihilistic mindset about all of it, which I understand.
I mean, sometimes for good reason. Things
totally
don't feel especially hopeful right now.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about social media, separating fact from fiction. The number of interviews that you and I have done with young people who are extremely online, there was an assumption, I think a few years ago, that millennials were, quote, digital natives, right? That they were intuitively equipped with like this ability to parse information to separate fact from fiction.
Yeah.
Do you still feel that way? Do millennials have a better information literacy rate versus boomers, for example?
Well, definitely, I don't know. Versus boomers, I would think yes, just because boomers are so bad and I don't think, what's really weird is how people over the age of 55 cannot, like, they don't have the AI detector, it seems like. Like do you notice? I'm so shocked by how many older people, and of course not all older people, just older people tend to like fall for that sort of like AI slop a lot more quickly. But then millennials have their own brand of disinformation or misinformation that they believe more quickly. I think it's sort of like, you know, misinformation, whatever, like wrong, false info, troll info, whatever. Like, it's bad information is different types of bad information can target different age groups and different demographics. And some are very effective against some demographics and some are very effective against other demographics. I think one consistency is lack of media literacy across the board.
Sure.
I think it probably gets worse as you're older and worse when you're younger. And like there is this like maybe this middle ground of like adults from like 30 or 25 to like 45 maybe, where they sort of are like enough with it to like kind of get things. I don't know, because once you become a parent though, you seem to lose a lot. Like I think parents freak out so much. There's such a moral panic among parents. So
like they become hyper vigilant for their
kids.
They
become delusional. Like they're the ones that fall for all that like fake TikTok challenges and stuff.
I see.
So I don't know. It's just like no one has any sort of ability to recognize truth from fiction.
Yeah, there's kind of like more and more moments occurring in society where people become vulnerable to new narratives. And it's like if you have a kid and it's your responsibility to take care of them, it's like, of course, you're going to like anything that comes across your feed, you're like, oh, fuck, I got to proof the house for this. One of my favorite, we were talking about interviewing young people, and you had talked to a young man who, I hadn't heard this one before, thought that 9/11 didn't happen. Like, not that it was an inside job.
Yeah,
he thought that like it
actually
didn't happen, that like the images were Photoshop or something like that, I understand.
I think like 9/11 is such an interesting event because to a certain demographic of young people, it is this like historical event like the moon landing, right? Where it's like, even though there are people alive that like talked about it from that day, like I think there's a certain strains of denialism that just deny they weren't around to even experience or witness that event, and it doesn't seem real. And I think, I mean, people deny everything now. And I think people question everything now. And I think 9/11 has sort of become the genesis of like so many conspiracy theories, especially since the genocide in Gaza started, because I think people are now increasingly looking at like Israel, and like I've seen a lot of conspiracies around 9/11 in Israel. and I'm sure people will be in the comments, those aren't conspiracies. Some of them very much are, you guys.
We're long since demonetized, so go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting because I think 9/11 for us millennials like was such a formative event. And so it's just like weird, but I'm sure that's how a lot of boomers felt about the moon landing, and which did happen. But
to be clear,
as far as we know.
We've talked a lot on this podcast about how general internet culture has kind of just drifted into politics.
Yeah.
Sports. I mean, every commercial you see now is in some way political. We're in this hyper-political era. And so I'm curious about how your beat, beginning writing about internet culture in like 2018, let's say, when we first started talking, how has that now become... No, well, as long as I've known you, not as long as you've been doing it. But it seems to me like everything has now just been gravitationally, magnetically drawn towards politics. And are you answering to a different editor, for example? Like, did tech at some point become politics?
It's so funny you say that because I did this piece for Wired not too long ago about these Democrat influencers you might have seen online. They were pissed at me for that one.
Thank you for not naming us, by the way. We're really reliant on the money. We're hemorrhaging over here. So.
You got to get that dark money. But that was pitched to the politics editor.
Yeah. So
I definitely write for politics editors more frequently. Than I probably used to. But then again, when I was at The Hill, I was that's an entire political publication. I think definitely now it's just sort of like it's either culture, tech, or politics that I write for when I pitch a freelance story.
Yeah, and proportionately, was tech maybe like 80% of it before, and now politics is like 50%, or like generally, what's the breakdown?
It's probably about that. I also just write for more like political publications. Like I'm a contributor to Zateo, which is like a much more like politically driven publication. Whereas previously, like I remember actually, I think it was 2017, I gave a talk in DC on influencers and Jake Paul. And this is like the first year of Trump's presidency, and people were laughing at me and thinking it was all a joke. And I was like, haha, no, but like, also he says he's going to run in 2035. So like, I'll be a White House correspondent.
I mean, those podcasters were certainly very influential last year.
But it's so funny because you know this too, but that's how it was in 2016. Like, that's how it's always been with Trump. And it's funny that it took them literally this third election now, second loss to Trump. It's like, finally it clicked. Like, oh, I think the story in 2016, well, they were like, Russia did it or whatever. Like they were sort of delusional about like how that had happened, that they didn't really acknowledge the fact that he leveraged the internet. And I think so much about the night of the Deplorable, cursed event. I don't know if you were there. Terrible event. But it was, all of these content creators that came together to celebrate. And Cernovich got up and was like, basically like, we ran Twitter and like we leveraged the internet to put Trump in power. And even the night that he won at the Hilton, I've talked about this a lot. Like I was there along with a few other reporters, and just it was like forum admins were there. Like it was. So he's Trump and the MAGA movement has always been this sort of like anti-establishment, like internet-driven movement.
Yeah. To watch part 2 of this episode, you can support the show on Patreon. Segueing back into the real world here for a moment, I took us on a bit of
I'm so glad
route.
that I got you to agree with me and you are on board with fighting age verification.
I'm gonna boost it up even. I'm joking. We've talked a little bit about alternative media, competing structures for free speech, investigative journalism.
Yeah.
Is there any solve for the crisis of legacy media? Because every experience that I hear is just, these things are basically unsustainable now without like enormous donors behind them, right? Like is
Larry
it actually
Ellison?
possible? Or Jeff Bezos and the Washington Post. Like, is it possible to run legacy media in the way that it has existed without some type of oligarchic donor behind it now?
I think legacy media is it's in this slow state of decline. I think that their for-profit business models were always corrupt. They were always in service of capital. They were never, and in a sense, it's just more overt now because they have these oligarch donors that people sort of understand.
That's just transparent.
Yeah, it's like, oh, at least you know that, by the way, this company has always served capitalism and will always serve corporate power. And, the New York Times in 2021 will tell you to get back to work and don't advocate for, any extra paid time off or whatever. So, maybe it's good, it's transparent. I am not, as you know, like a supporter of these legacy systems. And I do think that I do think that it's good that they're being dismantled overall. In some ways, obviously bad in other ways. But
was there a period where they worked better? Because I think we both share a criticism of alternative media. Like, we don't want all of politics to be litigated by basically stand-up comedians that have popular podcasts.
Like debate
you want
streams?
You want some more kind of rigorous, investigative journalism quality stuff. But what is the period that we're even nostalgic for? Did that exist at some point?
So in the 2010s, very millennial to be nostalgic for the 2010s, but I do think what was good about the 2010s is that you had this cadre of digital media companies because VCs thought that digital media wasn't going to be the content creator industry. They didn't take that seriously, and they thought it would just be the New York Times, but on the web. So they funded, Vice, BuzzFeed, a lot of Gawker, reporting outlets that that did challenge power, and I think actually challenged legacy media and put them on their toes and held them accountable in a way.
No, you were in the Vice doc from Eddie Huang. Yeah,
I still haven't seen it. I need to watch the finished version.
It's great. I didn't have super high expectations, and I was like, oh fuck, this is really good.
Oh, good. But Vice is I always wanted to work at Vice or BuzzFeed or one of the, it's those were these places that, especially if you were young and you wanted to speak truth to power, you had journalism resources and you sort of were following these journalistic structures and principles. And if you published something also, the White House would have to acknowledge it. And they couldn't just ignore it. And nowadays I think it's just increasingly, those things don't exist because digital media has been gutted.
Right.
We have Wired Magazine, which is doing amazing work and is probably one of the very few good, maybe I'm legacy outlets.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, this 2010s window kind of comes up a lot because it was great for music and for art and for kind of weird forms of culture.
Yeah.
Precisely because social media wasn't yet optimized. And then as soon as people learned oh shit, there's a ton of money here, everything becomes Spotify.
Yeah.
It's just super optimized, extreme asymmetry of resources.
Which is what I try to describe to people that I think have bought into this anti-tech, anti-whatever movement of which I'm anti-tech in some ways. Obviously, not all technological progress is good, but I think when people have gotten so the techlash was so effective in sort of making people outraged about technology, but they've sort of forgotten that the real driver is these profit incentives. And that is what made the internet so bad. And it's not just that Facebook is evil, which it is, and Uber, whatever. It's that it's that they're doing it all in the service of profit. And if we want to build a better internet and we want a better platform ecosystem and we want to get back to that internet, we need a less profit-driven internet.
State book.
No, we do not need that.
One of these days. On the topic of free speech, these things are sometimes not just questions of opinion, who you support, what you want to criticize. Sometimes they're issues of states and war conflicts, geopolitical conflicts. What do you think about YouTube having banned RT a few years ago at the beginning of the war in Ukraine?
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
I don't even remember who they banned and haven't banned because I saw Nick Fuentes is back on.
Oh, yeah. He's back on YouTube now.
Yeah. Why did they ban them? Because of
they banned
propaganda
them specifically.
Or something?
Yeah, so this is one of my favorite issues to kind of see where people land on it.
Yeah.
Because it was a state-funded media entity, right?
Okay.
Russia Today gets some amount of funding from literally the Kremlin.
Yeah.
And then they were spreading things that were factually incorrect on an American-owned platform such as
Something America
YouTube.
would never do. Yeah. I think that's bad. I think it's bad. Yeah, I
So
think
it's a kind of difficult thing because it's
well,
almost like
I
Yelp,
just it's
where it's like people can respond and have counter narratives and like make response videos and criticize, but like there's no clear mechanism of like who pulls the lever here in terms of like fact checking on YouTube, right?
and I
And this is
don't
one
like the
thing where
fact
it like
check.
really matters.
I don't like the fact checking. I don't like the top-down fact checking
Yeah,
from the
yeah.
platforms. We know how that works out.
Mhm.
They push government misinformation,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah.
So we don't want that. But
What do you like for fact checking? Is there a good
I
working
mean, honestly,
model?
community notes, like the more like that
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
model, which predates Elon, even though he wants to take credit for it.
It's
Like,
kind of like a Wikipedia model
yeah,
almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
like a crowdsource. And I think that that's the most effective. And because top-down fact checking, which is what liberal media advocated for throughout continues to advocate for even throughout, I think from the tech lash, is like, this is bad, you fix it. Like,
Right.
and the government's going to tell you what's true and what's not. And as
Mhm.
I've written many times, the government lies all the time and will just say whatever they want to push their political agenda. So, I think that that's hard. But I do think, like, look, platforms have every right to have standards, and people violate community guidelines enough. It is their prerogative to ban them. But I have a liberal view of banning. I don't really love permanent bans either. Like, I think people deserve a chance to come back.
Like a 5-year ban, 3-year ban?
Yeah, depending on like how bad it is.
There's an
And
expiration date. It's
yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah. I just think like lifelong permanent ban because we have such a monopolistic like
Yeah.
tech.
Well, so that was my follow-up is like, would you prefer the trust busting, like break up the monopolies? So if you're banned from YouTube, there's like a dozen other sites
Yeah,
you could
exactly.
be on?
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But under the current situation, it's like, I mean, if you ban somebody from YouTube, it's like you nuke their reach for everything by like
Exactly.
90%, right?
And of course, the entire far right has built up an alternative platform ecosystem to handle their views, right? So that, okay, well, that's fine. You can go and Kick and Rumble and all these other things.
There are some, yeah.
But on the left, you're deplatformed. You got nowhere to go. You have to use the right-wing ones.
If the left had vigorously defended free speech 8 years ago, would we be seeing the same degree of crackdown on pro-Palestine speech now?
No, because we would have had we wouldn't have we would have had more. I mean, maybe we would have seen crackdown because like the government has been pro-Israel, anti-Palestine for years. So like I don't know. I guess you in that alternative reality, like the government is maybe less beholden to Israel, which would be great. I would love to live in that world. I don't know how realistic that would have been, but I think that like Joe Biden specifically, I mean, look at the TikTok ban.
Yeah.
What an idiot. What an idiot.
Yeah, what are we doing now?
What a
Mark
fucking
Andreessen is going to
idiot.
own TikTok?
Yeah,
Is
Larry
that what's
Ellison,
happening?
a bunch of MAGA billionaires, and
Yeah.
it's going to be American, and
Right.
it's going to be trained on American data, and it's going to only promote Americans, and it's going to be a
They're going to curate it, right?
good old, yeah, it's just going to be another propaganda app. And it's notable, according to that Pew Research study that came out, I think it was like last fall, that TikTok was the only social platform left where news content creators skewed liberal to the left. The one.
Yeah.
The one. And that is the reason it was the target of the ban. We know why TikTok was banned. It was not banned over China, as the co-sponsors of the bill have said. Openly, it was banned because of the Palestine.
They just admitted it
Oh,
in
yeah,
the
they were
Wall
like,
Street
oh, we banned this
Journal.
over Palestine. You know how we said that stuff about China? We
this
don't
was
give
really
a
slow going up until like October 8th. And then there's like huge traction from senators.
Oh, well, they even said, they said that is why they needed to ban it. They were like, there's pro-Palestine content on here. And that was one thing that Democrats and Republicans can agree on. Yeah. And I think, look at where it's got us. Now you have ceded control of one of the most influential social apps of our lifetime to the far right because you would rather cede, this is the problem with Democrats as a whole, they would rather cede control to the far right than allow leftists to have any sort of platform.
Where does left free speech exist online?
Good question. My comment section.
In the group chat?
Yeah, I mean, not many places. Like, I wish that the left had had a comparable platform ecosystem. The problem is we don't have Peter Thiel and David Sachs and all these people to prop up.
But we got George Soros.
Like, yeah, which he doesn't fund the left, right? I know. We don't have like left, like Rumble, but for the left, like free speech, but for the left. Like, we don't have any of those like social platforms alternatives. Yeah. So we're forced to kind of use these main social platforms, and people have like some newsletters on Ghost, so I guess they can say what they want on there. So I support that.
What are your thoughts on sports gambling?
Sports gambling?
Yeah. It was legalized in New York maybe back in
Yeah.
2021, for example.
I don't know anything about gambling. I don't gamble. I think it's probably not good.
There are some very troubling statistics for
Yeah, it's
bankruptcy
probably,
and depression
probably
and,
not
and
good.
things like that. Yeah.
I see like the online gambling stuff all the time.
But so this is one of those questions about like, where do you draw the lines for personal liberties? Where like,
I think, but personal liberties around like speech is one thing, but like if you're gonna be involved in sort of like, I mean, should you be allowed to donate to like MLM Ponzi schemes? Should those be legal? Like probably not. Like that's economic. Like at that point,
it's fraud. Yeah.
You're essentially defrauding people out of money, and I think gambling is sort of a form of that. And I think that's not good. That's not a good thing. So we should probably disincentivize that. So I think that guy in Texas, that Democrat that everyone's so hyped on, that took the Miriam Adelson money or whatever, that like, and he's like, I'm pro gambling. That's the only thing that I've seen in my feed recently.
Yeah.
And he's like, and it's going to bring economic stuff to Texas. And I'm like,
yeah, when has that ever?
well, I don't know, man.
Yeah, a wealth extraction funnel is going to bring
I mean, I'm not
prosperity.
libertarian. So like, I agree. I think it's like the libertarians, and I love libertarian, like I love a lot of them, but like there's like the tech people that I don't even think are libertarians. They're like so far gone. They're just like monarchists.
They're another type of thing.
They're like another thing, a secret third thing.
But
like, you know, I think like, I mean, I talk, especially if you care about free speech, you care a lot about criminal justice issues, right? And like libertarians are also sort of like really good on like defunding the police and things like that, where it's like, I think there are commonalities to be found. Decriminalizing sex work as well. Like Reason magazine, actually Liz Nolan Brown does an amazing job covering that stuff. Like they covered FOSTA SESTA and the horrible fallout of that. So I do think that like it behooves anybody that cares about these issues to build you know, solidarity with groups that you might not agree with on a lot of other issues, like turning healthcare into the stock market or something, like which I think they want to do. Like, you know.
Oh yeah, they've got a whole bunch of other.
I don't agree with that.
But Reason is a very principled publication on free speech, and that's
Reason
kind of
is good.
unquestionable.
Yeah, I mean, I and same with like FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. They're like pretty libertarian, but like they, you know, but they've been very principled on these issues, and so I think it's great that they want to align with more, you know, traditional civil liberties groups and protecting immigrants, fighting these laws, fighting ICE. Great.
Tell us about the research, the lead up to this Wired piece that has been circulating widely on the internet, let's say.
Yeah, they made it so viral, which I loved. That story would have died in like 2 days if they just ignored it, but they made it go for like 3.5 weeks because these Democrat influencers like wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. I was like, keep talking about it. I had heard about this program that was this dark money sort of scheme, basically that this group Chorus, which I'd reported previously on, which is like trying to make the left Joe Rogan. You know, it's this coalition from Brian Tyler Cohen and some other people from this for-profit influencer marketing company that came together, and they're like, you know, we're going to build this like messaging machine for the left. And of course, by the left, they mean centrist Democrats.
Right.
And it's very funny to have noticed that they don't like the word, like I think they realize the word liberal is like forever tainted by their bad opinions. And so now they call themselves progressives, and it's like, there's nothing progressive, but okay. Yeah. Anyway, so I'd previously written about this company basically like taking images from like content creators off social media and just like putting them in their fundraising decks, and these content creators being like, hey, like I'm not affiliated with you, like Abu Ghazaya and some others. And so I had written about that for my newsletter. And so when they started to create this paid scheme, people reached out to me within the program and started to talk to me about it. And basically people were like, hey, you know, I'm signing this contract that I'm actually kind of uncomfortable with, but they're letting me change it. And I'm, you know, I don't know. And they ended up signing on to it. And so then multiple content creators within that program wanted to basically be whistleblowers about it and wanted to kind of talk about it and wanted to share information about it. And it turns out that there was this completely unreported aspect to it, which is that they had ties to this Democrat dark money group called the 1630 Fund. And that is essentially like the liberal sort of answer to the Koch network. And I think that's a huge problem because these content creators are presenting themselves as journalists online, and they're presenting themselves as these sort of like principled people that aren't taking money and aren't doing anything. And so I think you have the money aspect that's the problem. And then you have the problem of the non-disclosure, which is that these people are participating in daily messaging check-ins and they're not disclosing that to the audience.
Zoom call kind of thing? Yeah.
And I think, like, you know, I care so much about transparency in media and trust in media. And we've seen the far right, of course, embrace all these tactics for years. And the reason that's bad when the far right does it is not just because we get Donald Trump, but because it erodes trust in journalism and it makes it so that our entire political ecosystem is less trustworthy and transparent. And so now when you see this happening on the left and there's no transparency and there's these problematic kind of, you know, schemes that are also not transparent, that are also problematic in various ways, like I think that's corrosive. And we couldn't find a single ethics expert that would defend this program, which is hilarious. I called many.
When you're supported by a political organization, it's not like when you do a front-facing video for like a sports drink or something like that. Like you have to disclose like this is sponsored content. But if you're just giving editorial opinion, like there would be basically no way to know, right?
Well, exactly. And the way that these deals are structured, which I think is so dangerous, is they're structured. They're like, well, you can of course post whatever you want.
Right.
But of course we've curated, it's that like, what is the Noam Chomsky interview with the BBC guy where he's like, you don't have, like, he's like, no one tells me what to say. And he's like, the reason you're there is because they know what you're going to say.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's like that. It's like, they're like, well, and it's ironically, these liberal influencers made the same argument that Tim Pool and Benny Johnson tried to make of like, well, I was never told exactly what to say, you know, Russia just wanted to give me $100,000 and I had to, you know, maybe they weren't even attending regular messaging check-ins for that. Like, you know, I think, you know, Chorus was sold to investors as this sort of like way to solve the messaging problem with the Democratic Party. And so then to try to claim like, oh, well, we're actually kind of nonpartisan. It's like, no, you're not. You were explicitly sold as this fix. You're in a New York Times article quoted saying that. So, you know, I think that that's a problem. I think that, like, again, you're probably watching these content creators' videos, and it's also like who gets a platform, who gets funding
in my feed,
and who gets access to these politicians. You know, if Chorus or 1630 Fund or whatever becomes the gatekeeper to these politicians, which a lot of you know people say that they're trying to establish themselves as this gatekeeper. Like, who aren't they letting on? Are they not letting on people with certain views? Are they overwhelmingly the creators in the program of a certain demographic? Are they, you know, we don't know. We don't know because there's no transparency on these programs. We still don't even have the full roster of all 90 influencers.
Right.
And so there are people accepting dark money out there who we still don't know. And in these influencers, instead of refuting a single thing in the article, which they didn't do, they went on this like 3-week tirade saying a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theories about me. Being like...
What's your favorite?
Oh my God. Well, just basically that I control the internet. I'm secretly taking dark money. From who? I absolutely am not. I know where every single penny that I earn comes from. And that's something that that's important to me. And also ensures that I can freelance for mainstream media. Because if I was taking money, like, I would have to disclose that. Like if I was taking dark money, like that's what they don't seem to understand is like these places have editorial standards. Hence why there's also zero correction on that article because it couldn't disprove anything. But yeah, and then just saying like I'm evil. They said I'm a secret MAGA, you know, Republican, and they found
of all people.
They found when I like.
That's good.
Yeah, it was
great.
Really
Wow.
funny. Somebody was sharing some screenshot. She's a secret Republican, and it was like when in my life have I've been a Republican?
I mean, I've heard a lot of things like dinosaurs don't exist, but I have not heard Taylor secret Republican. That's a
big one on liberal TikTok. They really believe that.
Dinosaurs?
No.
Oh, that you're Republican?
That I'm a Republican, that I'm a secret conservative.
Why do they think that?
I don't know, but my whole thing is that, and by the way, this is like still going on. Somebody posted a video just last week. This big guy that does all this work in the space posted a thing of interviewing one of these wacko people, and they're like, "Oh yeah, she's a right winger, and that's why she's out for the Democrats." And leftists do get that a lot,
Okay,
you know,
you're
because it's
like an op trying to divide and conquer kind of thing. Okay, right.
by exposing, by bringing transparency, by advocating.
People say that about anyone who disagrees on whatever side. Yeah.
I think they say that about people, that criticize the Democrats. Is like, well, then you're helping the Republicans. I'm like, no, I'm criticizing the Democrats because I want them to win.
Yeah.
I want them to be an effective political party instead of actually capping for the Republicans.
A few years ago, you and I might have been meme admins. Now we talk on the internet and give opinions.
I'm still a meme. I still got my meme.
You still do post actually quite a bit. Yeah. How do you think that this process is going? Like, do you think that the left alt media sphere is being successful at shifting the priorities of the Democratic Party?
No, not right now, probably. But I don't know that that's, maybe you could argue it is the left that's ineffective because we haven't successfully taken over the Democratic Party.
But it worked for a certain element of the right where, from my perspective at least, the mainstream of the Republican Party kind of moved to where big audiences were on alt media.
Yes, but the thing is like, they have such an advantage on those. Like, the right always has such an advantage on the internet, whereas like the power of the left on the internet is diminished and oppressed by both the right and the center. So it's really hard for leftists to get any sort of power on the internet, as we know, outside of Doomscroll Studio. But like, I don't know. That doesn't mean that I don't think it's like worthy to build power online. Like, I think that that's actually one of the most effective things that we can do. And I think it's really bad, these people that are like, get off the internet and online organizing isn't real or whatever. It's like, no, again, the internet is the most powerful political tool of our time.
The internet is real.
We should leverage it. That doesn't mean that's the only thing we should do, but you shouldn't cede the entire internet, which is what I think a lot of people on the left want to do, to like the right, or sort of try to eliminate the internet somehow because it's a right-wing thing. It's like, what? So, I think it's worth building power online. But it's just hard because, again, all the funding and all the opportunities go to these centrist Democrats or the right. All the support goes to people that, run the American Girl doll Barbie meme account. Literally, this is somebody that got $8,000 a month.
Really?
Yeah, and that was doing selfie videos with Chuck Schumer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's the kind of shit that that is the type of stuff that's being rewarded by the Democratic Party. And that is why they keep losing, part of it. Mostly they keep losing because of their policy positions. That's the real problem. They can pay every single person on the internet to post and forward. The problem is their fucking policies, but they don't want to admit that. And so,
You're telling me that an earned income tax credit for Pell Grant recipients who started a small business in a fucking zip code isn't like the most compelling political imaginary you ever heard of?
It's so pitiful. It's so pitiful.
Taylor Lorenz, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. To watch part 2 of this episode, you can support the show on Patreon.